we as Murray folks are very sad to see that era past. But it's so in this business of having to move on and having to move up into a different class of ship, from wood to steel, and into a more powerful vessel. So there's not. It would be really a dream to hope and pray that Lossy would revive again, because that's not going to happen. And very similar thing has happened to Buckie. Again, the Buckie boats, a lot of them work out of Peterhead. The same thing has not happened in Macduff and Fraserburgh, because they have a very far-seeing inshore fleet, and they have adapted to the change very quickly. So I can't see that Macduff and Fraser being affected, although they will be affected to some degree, but I think that they'll continue to be far-seeing, as they've proved they are in the last 10 years.
A lot more about things. You can ask my grant, you nipped it off.
Oh.
We had no money in those days. There was no TVs, no radios, nothing to occupy our time but work. So we had to make our own fun. So in Lerwick, where this photo was taken, they arranged a mock wedding, what they call a milk wedding. They chose me for the bride, and they chose my chum to be the bridegroom. It's an old bit of curtain that I have on for a veil. A white cotton nightdress that I sewed in the evening glass. And she got a loan of that suited she's own, either for one of the crew of the Beaufort or the Lottie. That was gunboats that came into Lerwick in that days. Now, there was a minister, a mock minister, tile hat, coat, dressed up the part. And we had a grand player, a melodeon. And he leads from Lerwick to Grimsby. Splendid melodeon, you never smelt the tangle of oils. And then this minister, mock minister, performed the wedding ceremony. Just a good laugh, clean, pure fun. Just something to keep us going. Now that's fun, isn't it? Margaret Grant.
In the earliest that I can remember was just the boats going to the Smarlands, out aboard in Perba again, and the drifters, the men that was in the drifters, they just went to Peterhead and worked out of Peterhead, you see, because there was no, they couldn't accommodate them in going to Perba, you see. So there was no big boats as such in my time in board in Perba. The big boats were all kept in Peterhead, see. The ripper out this summer, like, and the days are suitable, like, so. That's a fine way to be honest, nice simple state. It was all petrol paraffin engines, see, Kelvin's, all Kelvin, great engine, but this boat is a Lister diesel, which is great engines, great.
If it changes the view see now, for that earlier days that you went to fishing, in the day for example?
Well, there's one great change is the price of fish.
Aye.
I mean, it wouldn't matter. I mean, I've seen landing 5 boxes, bad feather fish, are lovely haddocks, for 12 shillings a box. Well, I get a lot after we stopped that, we get started, I mean, in later times, started the crabs, you can, fishing.
The partons.
The partons, you see, and well, it was a job too. You send away your crabs to Billingsgate, and sometimes you're getting a blue label, or I condemned. So you didn't get anything for the crabs, and you had to pay the carriage. So
Would this have been maybe damage en route for
No,
here to Billingsgate?
no. I mean, it was with the train it was sent them, and we think that if they hadn't got a market for them, they just got the inspector along, and he just condemned them as unfit for human consumption, and that was the story as far as we were concerned. But so we did quite a lot of that, a lot of.
When I was in Yarmouth, Gutton, we used to rise at 5 o'clock in the morning, get for breakfast, and then we all get out walk down to the Deans, down past the Admiralty Road, and I was nobody spoke. It was hard dressed, nor quiets, nor boots, and my hair was folded, and you met all the quines walking down together, but there was hardly anybody, no noise, but just the thump of the boots walking down to the Deans to start at 9 o'clock, at 6 o'clock in the morning. Stop now. Started to get, we had to tie our fingers. Now that meant that every finger was covered and tied with twine. And I never liked it to get over this herring. That was herring, it was left over for the night before. And they were pretty hard, so what to use was scoop to slap them off with the farland. But it was I think, your fingers got half a sear with jabbing them in the herring you came. I think we should stop here now. For every fishing, we get round the baker. Every fishing, we had to prepare for, if we get to Lerwick or Yarmouth, we had to get cloots to wrap our fingers. So we get round all the bakers in the brook, wash them, dried them and cut them into strips. We have a ball of twine with to cover every finger to protect them for the rough salt in the knife. So it was.
Did some of the lassies ever get their fingers badly cut with that knife, Jessie?
Oh, aye. Many a time. They used to have strips up their arms, you can. And we, of course, I was a rest hut or somewhat again to get it wrapped up and the rough work maybe for 2 or 3 days. But the clothes fairly protected their fingers. Okay?
I believe that you dip your fingers in the water as well for a start.
For a start, we get in underneath the wall and wrap it with fingers. It seemed to clothes clung to our fingers and we'd have a better grip of the herring. And we took him up to got him with a fiddle. You can.
And was that just ordinary water or was it salt water?
Well, in Yarmouth we just used to put our fingers into the barrels of brine or salt water, you can. And that seemed to cure, sometimes it cured the CST, the salt. But In Yarmouth it was Guy Carl when you get done at 6 o'clock in the morning to start, just for a start you can. But it was a wild life that we had, and we got on together and friends for life, and it was great. I think.
Early mornings in that days. Could you
That's
tell us
right.
about that, Jessie?
Well, if I was over days here to got, we had to rise at 5 o'clock, and we came down, dressed and came down and walked down Admiralty Road. And we'd all with quoits and boots and on. But you never hear nobody speaking, just the railings folded and trying to keep warm. And you hear the clumps of the boots. It was just like an army of women going down Admiralty Road down to Dean's to start working. And when we got here, of course, her was all caked together, and we had to get in, tried to slacken with a scoop. And it was awful hard, I thought, and I like to got over days herring. And when the fresh herring came in at 10 o'clock, it was just a pleasure to start gutting again after that. But I like it, Yarmouth. It was great. In fact, it was like a holiday because the landlady made our meat and cleaned up our house, their lodgings. So it was great coming home to our breakfast, dinner and supper. We'd a good landlady. She belonged to Rosarty. Sheetlantini, it was her name. Our family still lives in Bro. And we had some rare times in Yarmouth.
Now, Yarmouth was a great holiday, you see.
It
But
was.
what about the other places that you went to the Gutton?
Well, in Lerwick, we used to go away in the month of May. Go over in a boat, and I was sick, and half of the women, there was some, was never sick, but I was never too long with the boat at all. And when we arrived in Lerwick, the calf was full of beds, was seen up in barrels, fall barrels. So they had to be the lids had to be taken off, and we had to fall with calf sick, and before we got into our beds at night. And that was after being in the sea the night before, which was, it was just a sick kind of feeling for 2 or 3 days before you got over the trip across. But I like it, Lerwick. But it was hard work the time the glut was on, because you was outside and I was near cover of being your head. But everybody was the same, and we just worked away, and it was some great times and half a good company. And just a way of life that we had, you see.
So the Gutton, the Hillier Road, what did your life consist of at that time, Jessie?
Well, it was not, we never started Gutton until the month of May, when we get to Lerwick, and then we'd a break between, and then we came from Lerwick to the Dunbars in the summertime for 2 or 3 weeks, then August time, and got 2 or 3 weeks work there before they stopped it. Now it was a couple of weeks before we get to Yarmouth. So we'd a break between, you see, we never got another time. But it's about 9 weeks, I would say, in Yarmouth. Sometimes it was 12 weeks in Lerwick. And then that was it, till following year again. So we tried to get a job at the service during the winter. You came. So it was just what it did.
Could you explain about the service work? What sort of work was that?
Oh, well, it was, I thought it was hard work. Well, I never get away from him, but I would prefer the Gutton to the service, because you had more freedom and you had a company, you had good company, and I think I would prefer the Gutton to the service, work in the service.
So
So
you
I
were,
thought it was harder work.
but you were at Lerwick, then the Broch, and then for the Broch you went to Yarmouth.
To Yarmouth, well, yeah, and I was in Shields. I was in Shields. That's the only time it was in Shields. That was The war was just declared about 6 weeks after I came home for Shields, 1939. And it was the year the war broke out, you came. So it was a finish of the herring. And the cure in as regards sad boats was staying up, you see. I think that's...
Was it inevitable that our fisher lassies working at the gutter and that married fishermen?
Well, the majority. It was the end of the fish ends that they married. And there were some used to marry after summer fishing, but the majority was married after Yarmouth, the Yarmouth fishing. And that gave them time to prepare. And it was, I would say, most of the fisher queens married fisher boys. You can? Oh, I think I don't know why.
So was a fisher wedding like in your days now, Jessie?
Well, of course, we had no wedding because Gabe was called up. You see, I should never say this. Gabe was called up before I got home for the Shields. And I never saw him for about 6 weeks. And then we decided to marry, so we just did a marriage. In fact, I was married in the Kirk here, in Inverallochie, 1939, 29th September. And it was just held in his mother's house, stayed by, and I reckon two or three relatives it was available, and that was it. Came. And then he was about back 3 days after that.
Was that sort of pretty typical of a fisher wedding in our days?
Oh no, some of them had big weddings. Mostly, well, they used to use the hall here. But everybody took part and set at tables and with their own dishes and steak pies, made steak pies and took them up, boiled meat and tartars and there's some great weddings here again. It's different now, of course.
Another thing I was going to ask as well is, there was a lot of country loons left and went on to the fishing boats and the drifters.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard any country lassies leaving their service and going to the fishing, to the gutting and that?
No.
No.
Never heard any country queens come into the gutter. They might have done, but I can't mind ever country queen come into the fishing at all. It was just fisher, nearly all fisher folk. Okay? Their fathers would get to fishing, although my father didn't know, but our folk was fisher, he came, but he was no fisherman.
Who would you say was the highlight of the gutting? The gutting era?
I would say that Yarmouth was a highlight. It was just like a great experience going to Yarmouth. And you met other folk that you hadn't seen for a whole year, you came. And it was great going up King Street on a Saturday night and meeting your lad and shopping during the day, like into other shops, and it was just like a holiday, really. That was a highlight for me, I would say, again. So, I think it's a great life. Well, when we get to Lerwick, it was huts. It was available here. And of course, we had to clean them out, and we took paper to ours and made them as comfortable as possible. And I was 12 beds. I was 6 of his bed together. I was 12 beds with 3 to a bed. A crew to a bed, you came. And so it was very comfortable, but we did do everything with rails. It was nearly like Yarmouth when all your work was done for you. And but when we were working, the packer used to come up and put on the tartars and we got something to eat. But when the glut was on, it was hard pressed. You came to cook at dinner time, because it only an hour, sometimes near hot, to get away to gut and pack again, you came. In Yarmouth, of course, it was completely different. We just look at after. It was super, because as I said before, landlady did made all the food and cleaned and did that. And we kept it tidy, of course. We kept it clean. Helped her when we wasn't working hard, but when we was working our hard, we wasn't able to do it, you can. So that was just the way it will live when we was our fishing.
So you're speaking about the
I get to Kirk on Sunday. Usually the Baptist Kirk, this is Lerwick I'm speaking about. And on Mondays there was a ladies' meeting. I think it was the Faith Mission that had it, but the Baptist Kirk minister was there too. So they looked after us, they healed our hands, but they looked after us spiritually too, which was a very good thing. And we came fat again if we was in trouble, only kind you can. If you was worried about anything. And I think the Kirks was very good to the Quines was, and the fishermen, I would say, when we were in Lerwick working, you can. And sometimes it was 13 weeks in Lerwick. I was homesick, of course. I was homesick for him. After but 10 weeks, that's as well. I think we've been enough, you can. But it was finding back next year for all that. So that's it.
And it was a time the Heron Drifters, of course.
Eh?
It was a time the Heron Drifters.
Oh, it was our
Steam
drifters.
drifters, aye.
They came for Peterhead, Bucky, Broch, Lowstow, Yarmouth, KY. They came for Hawaii, the drifters came. Of course, we worked in a station. There was the Bogie Run station was built into the sea, and there was rails. So they delivered the Heron and his bogies and took them up to the Farlands, and then coupled them in hour. And that was the way we got our Heron for the boat up to the yard, you can. So it was a great time to even you think about it. And I was up in Lerwick near for long ago, and I had says, and I says, well, I was speaking to somebody in Lerwick, and I says, well, I think it's a shame. You should have kept some art huts just for their heritage, till it came if it happened long ago. But there's only one left, and it's doing near a town, a Lerwick. So that was different altogether. The island, I think, 16 hour other stations you can, or the curing stations. So you would hardly ken it. I got a yard in Lerwick now from even back. So that's only why.
I came up to Fraserburgh in 1946 to work in Fraserburgh as a manager with a London fair, a Hull firm actually, Step Brothers. I took over the managership there, and they had a place in Castle Street. Well, Castle Street's changed a lot since that time, but I had quite an interesting time there. I was buyer, manager. So there was a lot of big kippers there then, at that time. There was Dunbar, there was McCrae, there was Cadora, National, and all the big kippers, Macfish, everybody was kipping there. And there was a lot of small firms too. Some of them were on the Braes, some of them were outside the Braes. But they were all doing pretty well at the time. And at one time, Mac Fisheries were wanting a lot of kippers, and they started taking kippers off of everybody that wanted to do kippering for them. And I was one of the ones who did kippers for Mac Fisheries as well. And there was an awful lot of rejects. Mac Fisheries were pretty hard to please, really. And they just rejected what was unsuitable for their product. But I was pretty lucky. I never had any rejects at all. I don't know why, but I was pretty lucky. because I think I was a good kipper. It did make a difference, you know, because all these rejects, you got no money for them at all. But we went on to our own business. Actually, I was curing for Cadora and Fleetwood and Hull and other little merchants down south. So I did pretty well at that particular time. And they carried on kippering small firms, large firms, until such times as the herring became a problem. And everybody went out of the kippering trade, most people anyhow, and there's only one or two of the big firms carried on, the likes of McRae, Mac Fisheries, and all the other firms, the little firms, pick it up. So there wasn't much they could do about it, really. On the curing side of the kippering, most firms use the traditional old-fashioned kilns. As time went on, most of the larger firms used the Tory kilns. The Tory kilns were made by the Tory research people in Aberdeen. These kilns were very, very good and could be used in many ways, from the ordinary kipper to the smoked fillets. As time went on, the herrings became more scarce and they started using mackerel for mackerel fillets and hot smoked fillets. And in fact, today mackerel is widely used by all the larger firms now. And there are other ways of smoking as well, because they've got some new automatic kilns which is added to the Tory kilns. Okay. I spent a lot of time working, learning the techniques of the Tory kilns, and had to do many different cures while working for D.A. McRae. McRae also did canned kipper fillets for different well-known firms and had great success with all the different cures to suit different firms. During the kippering season, most of the firms eventually stopped splitting by hand, and the Sadco machines was widely used for splitting the herrings for kippering. These machines could do 56 stones in an hour. Some firms had 5 or 6 machines, others had only 1 or 2 machines, and there was also boning machines for making kipper fillets. The larger firms would use the Bader machines, which was much more reliable and was faster. The girls were mostly employed all the time, like there was no daily work as far as that went. And when the boats come in, they were standing waiting in the fish house, waiting the herring coming up so that they could get on with the day's work. So that was the way it went in them days when the busy time was on.
It was busier in the 1930s though than any other time that you'd experienced.
Well, there was a lot of kippering done in the 1930s, and they were getting herrings from all over. They were getting herrings from the Clyde, and they was getting herrings from Mallaig and Ullapool, and I think Ullapool developed more during the war than what it did at any other time. So they was getting their herrings from anywhere they could get them at that particular time. The Clyde supplied a lot of herring during the springtime, and then they had the Fraserburgh fishing, Peterhead and Fraserburgh fishing, and then from there they went to Yarmouth and Lowestoft, and that was it.
And did you travel all over the country to kippering, Francie?
Well, yes, I travelled to different places for kippering. I travelled to Lowestoft and Yarmouth, and we went to Mallaig and Stornoway, and I think we covered most of the fishing ports with the kippering. But I started on the fish machinery, and I travelled 17 different places in 1 year repairing the herring machines. So it was quite a wide experience for myself.
This was machines for actually
For splitting the herring.
splitting the herring for
Yes.
Kipling.
For Kipling, yes.
Mm-hmm.
They were very widely used at that particular time. And I was employed by the makers of the machines. I was employed as an outside mechanic so that I could travel anywhere. And as I said, I travelled a lot of places all the time. As I said, you could get maybe some route, the bottom rail out in about 3 hours maybe. And then the next hour you would maybe get another couple of tiers off until you had the whole 12 tiers out or 14 tiers out. And I would say it would talk about 12 hours to clear a kiln.
Aye. And that was the Kipling finished in 12 hours.
That's it,
right.
yes.
Mm.
It was.
Aye.
16 to 17 years old when I went to Yarmouth. My curate, my first curate, was Tom and Teddy Archer. My second dean was Darcy of Seahouses. My third dean was Downey Erzati. 2 years of the open deans, 2 years in a close-in yard with Dan Taylor. Now, the transport that we had, Teddy Archer had a motor lorry. Down in the morning, back at night. He had a canteen, we got tea and took our own piece with us. We walked half the way to Dawson's, got a lift in a motor lorry next yard, the other half of the way back home again to the Deans. Downey had a small closed-in yard, the back of the herring market. We had to walk all the time there. Dan Taylor hired a horse and cart for the season. The driver was an Englishman. Down in the morning, back at night, as this was also the transport means of carting the herring to the farm. Now, lodgings, that's right, lodgings, 2 years in 116 Row off King Street. The third year, Alma Road. The fourth year, Ordnance Road. 2 years in Nelson Road opposite Chittleborough, the butcher. In the seventh year, Copperfield Avenue, a new housing site built where the old barracks used to be. Now, but payment. We got 15 shillings per week. 7 shillings went for lodgings and cooking our food. 5 shillings went for food, loaves, milk and beef. We took with us from home, sent by fathers or friends in a drifter before us, such as potatoes, hard fish, home-baked oatcakes, homemade strawberry jam and homemade blackberry jam, 2 boxes of tea biscuits. We never saw fancy, but at the weekend, when we had our friends or fathers in, we bought a piece of cake from Paddy the baker. The other 3 shillings went to provide cotton and twine to tie our fingers, an ounce of wool to keep us busy, when waiting for herring. A night at the Regent Picture House in Regent Road, where we saw the old-fashioned films, Pearl White in the Fatal Ring, The Clutching Hand, Human Sparrows. That's just a few. And one night, Dan Taylor's gutters were on Patty's Gazette. That was the news then. A man came to the yard and found us and told us when we would be seen, so we were all there. You bet. Also a shilling to put on something we only bought at Yarmouth. How we were paid by the barrel. We got 1 shilling equal to 5 pence a day to divide between 2 gutters and a packer. We got 4 pennies each. There were 12 pennies in a shilling then per hour for filling up the herring. We worked from 6 in the morning till 9 when we went for breakfast for the princely sum of 1 shilling. Enduring rain, cold and often having to break the ice in the barrel before we started to fill up. Often we had a gale venting. I experienced that too. We were in the wrong trade. Fishermen instead of fish curers. Now, Lerwick. Lerwick was a different season. It was summer time. We worked in the open. Sun bleaching down, blaring down on us, and I can tell you, we were sunburned. It was a different way altogether. We were right on the spot for our work, as we lived in huts, right on the spot. I worked for Mitchell the first year, crossed over in the old St. Sineve, came back in the St. Ronald, pulling in at Kirkwall. Had a back trip both times, even in the summer. We went steerage, had no bed, shared the deck, both with sheep and different kinds of animals. We had 10 shillings a week, as we had no lodgings to pay. A hut to 6 girls, paid off 2 each week, each day, to cook and clean the hut. Had to be scrubbed out every day, as it was bare boards. Our bed, made of ticking, we called it chaff, which again was wetting us delivered by the drifters. Even though we had been very sick on the passage, we had to set to, make up our beds, prepare the hut, scrub out the hut floor, forms for seats, which was to be our home for sometimes 12 weeks. Hard up time, but also very happy. These trips were our foreign holidays. Thank God for them. Now, I think I'll try to do. Now, I had not to do, and that tell you dance, and that tell you dance, did I? I'll tell you at least. We had £3 fixing the fixers. We fixed with a curate and he paid us £3 each. We would not go away to another curate or he would have been the Lowndes. We'd bide their hand that was 12 weeks, 15 weeks at that time until the season was finished. The £3 was spent on an Erskine coat. Not always not there new boots, maybe patched out. And then we got a new coat. If our coat was sere, worn out. So that's the way that we lived. And still, we was very happy and content. So, that's it.
War when a submarine was lost off a boat. Could you tell us something about it?
Well, we were fishing for lobsters at the time, and being during the war, we couldn't get out until the Blackwood lifted. So we just usually went out as early as we could when we was fishing for lobsters. And this morning, we were away south towards Cruden Bay. We just had started to pull the lobster nets when we saw this thing in the grey of the morning, and I thought first of all that it was the Salmon Cove of Cruden Bay, because it was just off Dunby and they have a net at Dunby. And but then as it got a wee bit later, I saw that it was a yellow boat, and I said to the crew, I said, that's a dinghy, because it had a wee sail. And so we stopped pulling our lobster nets and went off. We discovered this big dinghy, quite a big dinghy, and there was two single dinghies being towed at the back of it. So we went alongside. There was a wee bit of motion, not much, and we went alongside, and the men in the dinghy, a big dinghy, clambered overboard as quick as they could. And then they pulled this other two lads alongside and got them up board. So we discovered there was 13 altogether. And we didn't realise to start with it were Germans. First of all, we thought it may have been a plane that had come down, because we didn't realise there was so many of them. And they were the clambered aboard, so we just turned the boat and stopped fishing and made for Peterhead. And we asked them, but they were off, and they said, the ship. We asked them what was wrong. Engine trouble, they said. Engine trouble. And they said one of them could speak quite good English. He turned out to be the radio operator, a radio officer. And but he always referred to this other man. We asked him a question, he always referred to this other man in German before he gave us the answer. Of course, this other man turned out to be the commander of the submarine, and he said, we've been watching that light all night. That was Buchanese, you know, it was dim during the war, you see, and watching that light all night. And they asked if we'd been sent out to look for them. I said, no, we were just fishermen, just out fishing. And so we took him into Peterhead and got him up on the pier and took him up to the harbour master's office, because